What I'd like to say about Ken Dodd is that he was far more than just a comedian or just an entertainer, if you add in his skills as a singer, as a puppeteer, as a ventriloquist, as a philosopher.
Yes.
Ken Dodd was a force of nature. And I don't know I've seen any performer make quite that impact that he did. And when I left TV, I didn't see him for a few years. Always got a Christmas card. I have saved all my Christmas cards from Ken Dodd, from Norman Wisdom, from Senya Wences,
Yes.
from the Worsleys. And one day some of them will be yours, seriously. But I saw that Ken was coming to the Bournemouth Pavilion. This was about 18 months, probably less, before he died, with his one evening show. And it had been difficult for some time to actually go to theatres easily, because Sue was starting to need a wheelchair or whatever. And she said, we should try to make the effort to go. And I was nervous because I didn't want to be disappointed. And I was talking to Ken on the phone, and because he'd done a lot of interviews for me on the Heroes of Comedy, he thought nothing of getting on the train, schlepping all the way down to London.
I've seen them all, they're brilliant.
Then going all the way back. And he said, do come. So I did. And I got a car to take me, and I watched the show, and I was amazed how a man in his late 80s, coming to 90, could deliver in the way he did, but also how cleverly he was pacing himself. And he always traditionally did 3 parts in any show. And once he had the whole evening, you didn't have to worry about twice nightly. He'd come on and he'd do 25 minutes, which he did. And you wondered where the years had gone, because he had the energy. You thought, you can't keep that up. He then, at the end of the first half, would do 40. And he came on. There were certain routines he might have been doing by now, which he wasn't doing, because they were obviously too physically demanding. He did the one-man band routine on the road to Mandalay. He wasn't doing that. But he put all the vocal bits together and did a very funny medley. Was just one cornetto, the Cornish dance.
The band waiting at the back just to do a little cymbal.
And then he said, which was new to me, he said, I've been in this game a long time. A lot of you probably got a lot of questions you'd like to ask me. So he did question and answer.
Oh, really?
And that was fine. See you after the interval. And you think, how's he going to keep it up? He had an opening act. Well, he had Anne, who did a music thing as usual. And he had a magician with him, whose name I should remember, who did about 20 minutes, which is good to see somebody getting time. And then he came on for his top of the bill spot. And so he's doing stand-up. The material, well, I don't think I'd heard 3/4 of it. But, since I'd last seen him, that there were a few dodgy chestnuts, but you'd be disappointed if they weren't. What a wonderful day for shoving a cucumber through the vicar's letterbox and saying, hey ho, the Martians are coming. Things like that.
Did Dickie Mint come out on that show?
It's funny you mention that, because he then said to the audience, he said, now I know there's something you've all been waiting for. and he's over here. And he took a stool and he moved it centre stage. And then without having to walk very far, he reached to a table that was by his side, no further away from that chest there, and it was covered over from a cloth.
Okay.
And he whisked off. It was a bit like Bruff revealing Archie,
Yes.
with the shrivel of the settee.
Yeah.
And there was Dickie Mint.
Oh,
and
amazing.
he picks up Dickie Mint. Now he's now a ventriloquist, so he is allowed to sit on a stool.
Yes.
And he sat on the stool, put Dickie back, and then he did the rest of the show sitting on the stool.
Oh, okay. He made it
But
work.
still, he made it work. He still must have done 50 minutes in that last spot.
Wow.
And I think, now, I haven't seen him yet this evening. I haven't said hello yet, because I always go round after. I never interrupt a performer before. I'm a little embarrassed, because is he really going to want to see me? And I went round to the stage door, through the crowds, and yes, Mr. Dodd is waiting to see you. Do you know your way? No. Hello, young man. And he's got one sock on and one sock off, and the shirt is hanging out, and the glass of lager is in one hand, and wonderful to see you, and as always a dream. He said to me once, I've been so lucky with the ladies in my life. He said, there was my mum, and then there was my sister, and then there was Anita, who was his partner for the first 25 years, I guess, of his career, who'd been at his side in Oxford. She'd been a nurse, she looked after him. And then she tragically passed away. The stories that she was in the last months of her life, he was playing, I'm not sure that it was Bournemouth or Torquay in summer season, and every night he'd do the show, travel north.
Every night.
See her, make her a drink, or the other ladies in the ward. He'd go round, taking them their drinks, sleep in the hospital, and go back.
Wow.
Do a show. Wonderful to see you. It was catching up on old times. How was Sue? When Sue was very ill, she had cancer. In 1984. And I wasn't able to get to see him he was doing pantomime in Wimbledon that year. And I dropped him a note explaining why. I still have the letter, saying he understands better than anybody that the treasures I have.
Yeah, I understand that.
And in the end, I had to beg permission to leave him rather than him showing me the door.
Yes.
And at 1:30, I'm sort of walking to the car that's waiting, and that gang of people has been allowed to come in from outside. There's a very large sort of foyer area backstage at Bournemouth Pavilion. And they've all got the autograph books, and you know that he's going to be another hour or so, and you know that he's going to give all those people time. No performer I've ever known gave more time to his public. Perhaps they shouldn't have to. They enter a contract with the audience, they pay a ticket, they pay a television license, whatever.
That's it. It should end there.
But Ken, and there was one occasion he did Parkinson's show. It might have been one of his own shows. And I would go, I go to the dressing room, see that he was okay, getting his stuff together. I then go and leave him and say I'll come back and come up to the green room, and I'll be back in say a quarter of an hour. And they'd still be putting the carrier bags together. But anyhow, we got it all together, and you can leave this here safely, Ken. Come and have a drink. Right, it might now be 10:15, maybe a little earlier. It took us an hour to get from the dressing room in Television Centre to the green room on the top floor. because people seem to come out of the darkness. Oh, Mr. Dodd, I can't tell you had that. And would you sign this autograph? And he'd want to know everything about them. And there are still people working for him.
He cared about people,
He
didn't
cared
he?
about them.
He really did.
And it's so wonderful that this exhibition has been launched. I shall do my utmost to get up there. I don't think I'll be able to take Sue with me. It's too long a journey. And to follow in from that record-breaking Beatles exhibition and to be there. I haven't spoken to Anne about it yet, but she's got to try and get them to bring the exhibition, take it on tour,
Yes.
and take it to the National Theatre.
Definitely.
Or the foyer of the Palladium, or somewhere.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
That would be... He deserves that.
Yeah, he
or
does.
the Victoria and Albert Museum. We've got a big...
They do whole sections on people. I'm sure
Yeah,
they must be lined up for that in the future.
And there's a little video you can see online, which is wonderful. But Ken Dodd sort of launched my career, and he then became very ill after the Bournemouth show, and Anne had told me he wasn't very well, he was in the hospital. And then I'd heard on the grapevine that he was going home. In fact, no, I got a long telephone call from him, which I only answered the phone by a fluke of luck. We'd been out and I was just coming back and the phone rang. And I rushed to get it because I'm always nervous about not answering. Hello, young man. Just thought I'd give you a call to say hello. And I know it was to say goodbye.
Really?
And we chatted for half an hour. And everybody says I should do the Ken book. The great sadness is that I was only able to do the Tommy Cooper book because he'd been passed away for 30, 40 years.
Yes.
And it's time for a reassessment. And after that period, you're able to see somebody in the context of the archive that I acquired. And likewise on Hancock. Hancock had been dead a long time.
There's a lot of information out there
but
now.
Doddy is very recent, and everybody's trying to do it, and Anne did something. And I don't know when the time comes. It's wonderful to have all the other versions because you can bounce off them and put them right. And of course he'd been so keen to do one himself. And it's having the energy, and everybody says I should do a more personal book about myself.
And your relationship with Ken as well.
In which case, there'd be a whole chapter on Ken Dodd, which would be nothing like the chapter I wrote on Ken Dodd in the other book. And there'd be chapters on other people I'd got to know quite a while away from comedy, you know. So,
well, there is this Parkinson as well. There's that whole genre of different sections.
Bing Crosby. I once wrote a book called Them Irreplaceable about the great entertainers. There's a whole chapter in Bing. That was before I met him a couple of times, and I got letters from Bing Crosby.
Wow.
Marlene Dietrich. Did I tell you about?
No.
I wrote in this book, I did a chapter on Marlene Dietrich, and because I always want to get the facts right, she was living in retirement in Paris, and I sent her the copy and said I just would be grateful to you if you would give me point out any inaccuracies. And this was a book this was a very famous American illustrator. Mm-hmm. And I chose 12 great entertainers.
Wow.
Only one Brit there, Noel Coward. Crosby, Astaire, Judy Garland, Chevalier, Jack Benny. And she wrote back to me, and it started a correspondence of 4 or 5 letters in which she was saying how perceptive I was to see that and this and that, and how this writer got it wrong. And very pompous to say it, she actually wrote, and I could show you, people like Hemingway and Kenneth Tynan got it wrong, you have got it right.
Wow.
And she said, if ever you're in Paris, let me cook you lunch. I think I'm the arch name dropper because within 6 weeks I was due in Paris. And I said, I wrote to her, don't want to impose, no, you're in the diary. And that morning, I had a meeting scheduled with Sammy Davis.
Did you?
Who was coming on the Parky show.
Okay.
The following Saturday was on a concert tour of Europe, and I had to sort out with him what he was going to do, and what numbers he wanted, and any special music requirements. And when I got to his hotel suite, the whole place was in chaos, because his wife, Elisa, or something, I'd have to look it up, because this is the sort of thing I should write. Her jewels had been stolen that night, so I was meeting Sammy Davis Jr. in the middle of a crime scene.
Oh dear. Wow.
And it was simply a question of, look, you know, I know you're preoccupied, I just want to say hello. We look forward to seeing you. You let me talk to your MD or whatever. And came away and got my cab to take me to have lunch with Marlene Dietrich.
Nice. It's amazing.
Did I tell you that?
No, that's incredible.
And she had this sitting room. It was about twice the size of this room, very large. And in each court, just as I cultivate plant chests, she had a full-size grand piano, concert grand, in each corner of the room. I said, well, what you got 4 grand pianos for? And this was after she'd cooked me lunch, steak and frites.
Nice.
And apple pie. She didn't eat, but she enjoyed cooking for other people. And she said, oh, the grand piano, people asked me that, she said. It was the only way I could get record royalties out of Nazi Germany during the war.
Really?
Because she was now living in France.
Yes.
Or America.
Wow.
And just as I've got pictures, she had, just like Dodge's piano, pictures of her with Eisenhower, pictures of her with King George, with the Duke of Windsor, with all the greats. And there was one thing which looked very odd. It was the sort of thing you might have seen in a seaside souvenir shop. And it was framed, it was a sort of recessed frame. It was like a couple of fossils.
All right.
And I said, what's that? And she said, you want to know what that is? I will give you permission to take it down and read what's on the back. I had no idea. And it said, for dear Marlena, with my love, from Alex. She said, that was Alexander Fleming, and they were the first moulds of penicillin.
No, wow.
Yes. And many years later, I keep an eye out for this sort of art, and I've got to find it for you. Oh, I hope I can find this for you. Here we are. And this was a wonderful cartoonist in America called Edward Savall. And he, with his partner or wife, did a book which was the first meetings of famous people who became friendly, or maybe not so friendly, with each other. And one of those people, included in the book, I don't want to spoil the surprise for you. It is here. Here we are. Which was Arthur Conan Doyle and Harry Houdini. And that's the original of that. And Conan Doyle became very friendly with Houdini because he attributed all Houdini's feats to spiritualism. Yeah. So that is the original of that illustration.
Oh wow.
And then purely by chance, I got the print for, well, it's not a print, it's an original first. And then the dealer who sold it to me said, are you aware of the book he did? In which it's reproduced. And I wasn't, so I got hold of the book and sent it to me. And then I found, I haven't read it religiously. Now there is Arthur Conan Doyle and Harry Houdini, and there is Alexander Fleming and Marlene Dietrich.
Wow, that's...
Isn't that amazing?
That's incredible. That seals up that story, doesn't it?
And it was almost as if I was meant to see that.
Yes.
I was meant to have that. I was meant to meet Dietrich.
Like I said, it's all connected, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was going to mention, because I was at Sir Ken Dodd's Liverpool Cathedral when you spoke. I was just going to mention that last... Yeah, it was wonderful. It was very emotional, but it was, like he would say, a wonderful day, because everyone he loved was there, the Diddy men were there, and that's when I started to let the tears go, when
I believe
they followed him out.
I believe you can still access that online.
Yes.
And you'd be very welcome to use any of it. It's the proudest moment of my whole career, and it just summed up everything when you think of who was there in the audience and how the whole, certainly the northern show business had come together.
Yes.
And the number of people who'd made the trip up from London. When I visited Doddy, I was only allowed into the front room, but in later years, a short while after the funeral, Anne said, come up and, let's sort of remember things. And I went up and stayed overnight in Liverpool, not at the house, but I spent most of the time at the house, and I was allowed into the house on the other side of the corridor.
Oh, okay.
Have you been
Right.
there?
No, I haven't, no.
And it was just like an old sort of, I remember my grandparents, the sort of snug, the parlour, and lots of early souvenirs of Doddy's career on the walls. And the round dining table with the cruet in the centre, which is obviously where he ate all his meals. And one picture that had pride of place, which was the first season he played in Blackpool, when he was the supporting act on the show at the Central Pier. I think it was called Let's Have Fun or something. And that was Jimmy James did several seasons, and this particular season was Doddy's first year as a professional. And top of the bill that year, and they'd only just done a television show, which had been a disastrous flop, were Morecambe and Wise.
Oh, okay.
But nevertheless, they were top of the bill, and Ken Dodd was down the bottom.
Yes.
Many years later, talking with Eric and Ernie, and although he wasn't alive to say it on my tribute to Ken, I got somebody to say it for him. He said, nobody ever followed Doddy. And, because nobody could. And I think that probably goes for the whole of world show business.
Yeah,
I had a very close friend, an American magician, Ricky J.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And Ricky came over and did a show and had some time to kill. Where should I go in London? Who should I see? Any talents that I should be aware of? And I took him through the roll call of what was on in the West End. Probably anything worth seeing had been in Broadway anyhow. The Palladium would have been showing a musical. I said, if you really want to see a great talent, you'd have to go to Great Yarmouth. He said, where's Great Yarmouth? I said, well, it's up and round a bit. It's probably about 100 miles. You have to get a train or a driver to take you. He said, leave it with me. And before he came back to London, he came back to London, and I said, how did you find Ken Dodd? He said, we've got nobody to touch that.
Wow, that's a great compliment.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I don't think he went round, but I'm certain I would have known had he. Somebody who was a great admirer, and I think maybe in my pecking order, I'd have to put him in the top 4 or 5. talking about comedians,
Yes.
talking British comedians, and for me, he is British because the British took him to their hearts, was Barry Humphries.
Oh.
And Barry Humphries always said to me, do you know the person I'd always liked to meet is Ken Dodd?
Did he?
And Ken Dodd always said, that's that Barry Humphries you've got to watch. Eventually, they met up and they agreed that they would go to see each other's shows. And I never got a chance to discuss Barry with Ken, but Barry said, I couldn't believe it. You know, it's as if he's just started in the business. You know, he kept trying to get me to drink a lager. And, and I think he was a bit befuddled by the tickling stick and all that. But what a meeting that would have been for that book.
Oh, can
Ken
you
Dodd
imagine? Yeah.
And Dame Edna Edwards.
Brilliant. I was so pleased I took Nina to see Barry Humphries. Was it last year? When he was doing the last tour? He come to Eastbourne. Did you see the show?
Yeah.
It was so nice.
That had been worked out and he was sitting down in that. There's something you should have. If I can find it. Shut your eyes. Okay? Not to open your eyes. And I hope you will be able to find somewhere in your home. I hope that Nina will allow. You can open your eyes now. I'd like you to have that.
Oh, really?
That is the facsimile of the one on my wall. And when you can order that print from the National Portrait Gallery, as you can order some really wonderful things.
Okay.
And I'd made a pilgrimage to the gallery soon after it was hung. I think they hung them, don't they?
Yes.
And then realised when I got home that you could order a print online. You can do that.
Oh, okay.
Not of every painting though.
No.
Because a lot of them have copyright restrictions.
Mm.
And I wasn't sure whether I wanted a black or a wooden sort of beige frame. So I left it to the picture hanger to hang it with the other print I've got of Doddy.
Oh, I see.
Which was done by the artist who painted this, David Copley.
Yes.
And I'd like you to have that.
Are you sure, John?
Yes, I am. Of course I am.
Oh, that means a lot. I mean, this ties up this perfectly because I was in Ken's dressing room touring with him, and the original of this painting was on his floor, and he said the artist just gave this to me, and he was talking to me about this painting. So that means a lot. Thank you so much. I will make space. That will be up tomorrow. Oh, that's so kind of you.
Oh, one quick thing. I often, when I meet young performers in comedy, I say there's one clip you should access. It is the nearest I can think of a masterclass in comedy, and it is Ken Dodd on the second appearance he made on the Parkinson show, telling the story of the three-legged chicken.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
I don't know. I must have seen it once, but I don't remember particularly the story.
It will be certainly on the Heroes of Comedy of Ken Dodd. What makes it so remarkable? Because he's taken what is possibly a very old joke, although I hadn't heard it before, and he's extended it into an anecdote which he tells over the space of 5 or 6 minutes. Of course, seeing him do it, you realise the use of mime as he's telling you the crazy, zany tale of this weird farmer trying to chase this three-legged chicken, and all the while he's miming the farmer and the chicken, very much like Jacques Tati. He used to do an act miming the horse and the jockey at the same time.
Okay.
At the same time, of course, as he has the split-second timing of the delivery, you don't hear the punchline coming until the very end.
Had his brand new Jaguar, beautiful car, driving up the M1. He's just keeping it, 69 miles an hour, like Jag drivers do. Happened to look in his mirror, and he sees a chicken running alongside him. A chicken, a three-legged chicken. So, put his foot down, gets it up to about 90. That'll fix him. Cock-a-doodle-doo. The chicken's still there. Suddenly, the chicken puts its right wing out and overtakes him. And they're doing about 150 miles an hour, the M1. Him in the Jag, the chicken ahead. He's not catching. Come on, you little beggar, come here. Suddenly, the chicken puts his left wing out up a slip road. He said, I'm after it. So he chased it up a slip road, down all these little country lanes. Suddenly, the chicken put his right wing out again and shot into a farmyard. He said, I'm after it. Into the farmyard, pulled up, no sign of the chicken. No sign of the chicken, just an old farmer crossing the farmyard, as farmers do. I don't know why they walk like this. There must be a reason. So I said, where is it? He said, what? Where's the chicken? Oh, he said, you chased it? Yes, he said, I chased a three-legged chicken. And me, oh, yes. The farmer says, who are? Who are? He said, I breed them. He said, you breed three-legged chicken? Yes, he said, I breed three-legged chicken. He said, why? Well, he said, the farmer said, well, I like a leg. Isn't the wife? She likes a leg. And the son, he likes a leg. I said, what do they taste like? He said, I don't know, I've never caught one.
There's slapstick there, there's spoken humour, there's mime. It appeals to all ages. And there's nobody who wouldn't laugh at that. You can be a 5-year-old, you could be 95. Ken Dodd did it for all of them.
Wow.
And I rated him very highly, and I genuinely loved the man.
John Fisher, thank you so much for being on Eyes and Teeth. It's a pleasure to know you and even to get your stories on these wonderful people. Can I thank you for everything that you've done for variety over the years, behind the scenes? I never thanked enough for bringing people, talented people to our world, which you have done, bringing them to the forefront. Ron Lucas, Paul Daniels, Tommy Cooper, Sir Ken Dodd. If it wasn't for people like yourself, and you've been one of the most celebrated producers of our time, thank you so much for what you've done, because you brought these wonderful people to us.
Thank you for those words. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Eyes and Teeth.
Good afternoon. How do you describe Ken Dodd to someone who never saw him perform live on stage? Words are inadequate things at times, but how about a joking, jumping, singing, skipping, verbal, visual whirlwind of laughter? A one-man carnival of comedy and colour, music and mayhem, festivity, friendliness, and fun. Sadly, today we live in a shallow age of instant celebrity, where we have more so-called national treasures than I would care to shake a tickling stick at. Ken put it in his own words. I don't do much television these days. I can't cook. You see, national treasure, well, Doddy was the genuine article who celebrated life in all its absurdity, from the cradle to the grave, tickling the funny bones, teasing the chuckle muscles of everyone, from tiny tots to geriatric grandmas and grandpas throughout the land. I found out that for myself the first time I saw him perform, which was, yes, Jimmy, at the London Palladium in 1965. I never knew such laughter was possible. I first met him a year later. I was now an undergraduate. He was playing a 3-week season at the New Theatre in Oxford. It was also the time of Beatlemania, but let us not forget the time of Doddy mania. He was the one solo performing artist capable of giving the Fabulous Four a run for their money in the charts. And every night the police were required to control the crowds outside the theatre in George Street. Something unheard of for a comedian. With the self-confidence of youth, I had written to Doddy requesting an opportunity to meet. This led to an evening spent in his dressing room discussing the business of comedy and all the great comedians he admired. He was a little surprised that I'd even heard of some of them, names like Billy Bennett and Suzette Tarry, who gave him the idea of the tickling stick, and Gilly Potter. You know, young man, one day you should write about all this, he said. And a few years later, I did just that. And some of you will have the result on your shelves at home. Little did I know then, of course, that our lives would cross again so many times. From the Michael Parkinson shows, his own series, and This Is Your Life, to his London Palladium Christmas special, Heroes of Comedy, the escapades of the Diddy Men, and so much more. I last saw him perform at the Bournemouth Pavilion almost exactly a year ago. It was Easter Saturday. He was given a standing ovation after a 4.5-hour show, of which he must have done, well, he did 3 hours of it. I last spoke to him just a few weeks ago, just before he came out of hospital. He was still buzzing with thoughts and ideas about the great funny men and women we both worshipped. The death of Victoria Wood hit him particularly hard. As Stephanie alluded to earlier, it is somehow ironic that his death should be bookended by those of not one but two other cultural icons. I refer to Sir Roger Bannister and to Stephen Hawking. You see, they all had a deep interest in one subject, and that, as you know, was time. Hawking wrote a best-selling book on the matter, A Brief History of Time, and reached a wider audience in the process. Bannister had an almost clinical obsession with it. The merest fraction of a second was all important, and he entered the record books because of it. As for Doddy, well, he had his own particular take on the subject. You see, young man, time is an illusion, he used to say as I tried to explain the difficulty of editing a 60-minute spot down to 5 minutes. That said, I have never heard of him being late for a performance. And as for overrunning, he brilliantly turned his miscalculation of time into a cornerstone of his act. What did he used to say? Don't worry. You'll be safe. You'll be going home in the daylight. One thing is for certain, no performer I've ever known had more time for his public. He never shortchanged them on stage. He was always available for them off. I once had to walk with him the short distance from his dressing room to a green room at the BBC Television Centre. Depending on the lifts, it should have taken at most a couple of minutes. It took close to an hour. As first one person, then another, then two or three more seemed to emerge from the shadows, wanting to shake his hand, to thank him for the happiness he had given them. He chatted away to each in turn, wanting to know about their lives, wanting to engage in sincere conversation. That was his way of repaying them. He always knew that as a comic, he was incomplete without them. Ken Dodd had an astonishing performing career, lasting over 70 years, for all but a tenth of those performing as the uncontested solo top of the bill. And in all that time, and this is quite remarkable, he never copied anyone. His comic persona appeared almost fully formed back in those early days when he was being spotted by the likes of his agents, Dave Forrester, Nancy George, and BBC producers like Ronnie Taylor, Jimmy Casey, bless him, and of course Barney Kohler. Ken continued to polish, to refine, and of course to expand his act over the years. But while he didn't copy anyone, he seemed to absorb within his own image so much of the best of British comedy and humour. There was the timing, panache and sparkle of Max Miller, the impishness and glee of dear Arthur Askey, the droll burlesque of Sandy Powell, the rebel instinct and sense of wonder shared by Dan Leno and Spike Milligan, even the child-friendly inventiveness of Roald Dahl, and the vocal dexterity of our greatest ventriloquist, Arthur Worsley. He was, in other words, a one-man compendium of the British music hall tradition. He was also the humblest of men. I think he did have ego, of course, because all performers need that. But he had no conceit, no concept of his own greatness. In his eyes, he was just a working pro, doing what he could, the best he did. If I may take you back to Television Centre again, we were walking through reception one day when coming towards us through the big main doors were the two Runnies. Ken sort of melted in their presence, like a tongue-tied schoolboy meeting his sporting hero. This was not mock adulation put on for comic effect. It was sincere and true. And after the joshing, the hugging, and the handshakes, we went on our way. And he turned to me and said, I wish I had half the talent of either one of them. They know what comedy is really about. They were brilliant. But little did he realize that he had double the talent of the two of them put together. I have had the honor of working with many comedy legends. True giants like the King of Slapstick, dear Sir Norman Wisdom. Tommy Cooper, of course. Askey, Dawson, Morecambe, Wise. I know that if they were here with us today, and who's to say they aren't, they would all agree with my assessment that Ken Dodd will be remembered as one of the three greatest performers produced by the British variety stage. There was Max Miller. He was a comedian who sang songs. There was Gracie Fields. She was a singer with a flair for comedy. And there was Ken Dodd, who came along later and literally combined the best of them. When Doddy was the special subject of the 500th edition of This Is Your Life, Eric Sykes, comparing him with the comedians of a later generation, referred to him as a Chippendale in a room full of G-Plan. To quote Sir Michael Parkinson in conversation only last week, no one who tried to make a living persuading people to laugh and was any good at it could deny the inspiration of his example. And on Ken's 90th birthday, the drama critic Michael Billingson, writing in The Guardian, admitted that he had been touched by genius in the theatre on only 2 occasions. Once was watching Laurence Olivier, the other time, Ken Dodd. That this man should not be awarded a knighthood for so long was about as unjust as the idea of Churchill being denied a state funeral. They treated Chaplin, remember, in the same shabby way. They were both at the same level of excellence. But it all came right in the end, allowing Ken just time to enjoy one last lap of honour around his beloved theatres, meeting more fans and making more friends along the way. It was the other Eric, Morecambe that is, who said that nobody could follow Doddy. Now nobody can. The lights have dimmed and the curtains closed on his wonderful world of variety. Ken Dodd was, no contest, the complete comedian, our greatest entertainer. But he was more. He was a life-enhancing force of nature. He was a fount of charity, kindness and bonhomie, and a loyal friend. It was typical of him that he never forgot our first Oxford encounter and referred to it warmly during our last conversation. Let us rejoice then and say thanks for his life and talent today, at the same time as we thank this magnificent city of Liverpool, not to mention his beloved Knotty Ash, for providing the environment in which he thrived throughout his life, at the same time as we also thank and honour Lady Anne for the strength and support she gave him in his later years as he continued to transport audiences to a happier place like no performer before or since. Max Miller used to say, "When I'm dead and gone, the game's finished." Well, it is now. We'll never see the like of Ken Dodd again. Thank you. Thank you, Sir Ken. Tatty bye.
Eyes and teeth. Try and listen to John Fisher's tribute without being emotional and absolutely impressed with his knowledge and passion for the world of comedy. He really adored Ken, and that has to be one of the most beautiful tributes I've ever heard. Thank you, John Fisher. To end Eyes and Teeth, the mammoth podcast project I spent 4 years putting together, there's only one interview that can follow John Fisher, and that is Sibby Jones, Anne or Lady Dodd. Yes, it's not over yet. It is the longest episode ever since Eyes and Teeth began. And that is my tribute to Doddy. Enjoy my last ever interview with the Lady of Knotty Ash, Anne Dodd. Welcome to the very last episode of this wonderful project I started over 3 years ago. There's no way I can end this podcast without talking about the greatest of all time of comedy and variety in Great Britain, the great Sir Ken Dodd. We all miss him so much, but I'm delighted to say, please welcome to Eyes and Teeth, Lady Anne Dodd.
Lovely to see you, to meet. I can see you and see you again. Lovely. We had a great time working together.
Completely honoured. And I talk about it even to this day when I'm on stage talking about working with you both. And it's just such a wonderful time to be involved, even just a little part of the career that Sir Ken had. And Lady Anne, it's wonderful to have you on this show. Thank you for giving me your time today. I know how precious your time is, and it's constant. I mean, you were busy when you were doing the happiness shows, but you seem to be even more busy now, keeping the legacy going. And the interest is always going to be there because it's down to you. You're moving on with these tributes that you've been doing as well. I'd like to talk about the first time I actually encountered yourself and Ken when I was 14 years old. I met at the Guildhall, Portsmouth, and I was 14 years old.
I remember that gig. By the way, just call me Anne. I remember that gig in the Guildhall, Portsmouth. Yes. After that, we played the Kings in Southsea next time we went to Portsmouth, you know.
Yes, and it was always then at the Kings.
Once. So that is
was it?
Yeah,
that was the first time I ever met. So I got a train from Basingstoke after school to meet Ken. I had a whole list of people I wanted to meet and try and get some advice and just meet great stars of the day. And Ken was on my list that week. I got a train. I spent all my paper round money to get a train, and I got there about 7 o'clock, and it was too late. The show had started, so I waited until midnight, and then after midnight. And I met Ken. He gave me advice. I was so in awe. And you were there running backwards and forwards. I thought, it's so busy. And he gave me his address. He said, stay in touch, and one day you'll tour with me. And I held that close to my heart. And it was amazing. It wasn't amazing after that because I missed my train and I slept on the train until I got back. My parents didn't even know I was gone. So I know. So I met Ken Dodd, but I got back home about 7 a.m. from that train ride at 5:30, and I snuck into bed. And then 5 minutes later, my mum knocked on the door and said, "Get up for school." So I missed it. If only Ken knew that. But that was how much I admired. So I think an audience was just coming out probably around that time, and I was like, I have to meet this icon of comedy. And he didn't disappoint. He was talking to all the fans there, and he gave me his time. He always did that for fans, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He always had time for fans. He enjoyed chatting to them. He particularly liked young fans to come, and students often came, and you think, oh my God. There used to be about 6 or 7 came up to when we were playing up in Cumbria. Anyway, this particular theatre, I think it was in Kendal, leisure centre there, and they were a group of rugby players, and they'd sit on the front row and say, they're in again. But there was a great audience, and the first time they came, they were heckling a bit, but in a nice way. It was fine because it's a show. It's not a club, it's a theatre show.
Yeah, of course, a different atmosphere.
He loved feedback, and
did he?
He always had time for people. He did. Because he was interested. He was interested in people. He wasn't just doing it as a matter of course, and it's the good thing to do, the right thing to do. No.
Yeah, that's amazing. I remember after that first meeting with me, I wrote to him to tell him I got a job at Blackpool Tower in 1995. So I was probably 5 years older, and he said, please come and see me at the Grand Theatre, because he was doing the whole season there. And so I went to the stage door, and because he knew I was coming on this occasion, and you met me at stage door. Oh, you're Steve, come on through. And I was so excited that you knew my name. And then you took me through after the show, and I sat with Ken about 50 minutes to have a little chat. And he would give me advice after advice, ask me what I wanted from the business, and just told me to watch out and be lucky. And again, he gave me that time. It was so nice. And again, he said, you will one day tour with me. And I guess it was another 10 years. And then we did the tours together, and you gave me so many dates. And I thank you for that time, because I know you were key in booking the acts and support acts and booking all the dates as well. And so thank you, because I've got that part in my heart,
Yeah, the last 20 years, really. Do you remember Keith McAndrews?
Yes.
He was booking up. Well, he died in 1997, so you'd only be
Right.
pretty young still.
I was
But
22, yeah.
he booked all these one-nighters we were doing after the seasons. You know, there weren't seasons really. You could be doing every Sunday somewhere for a few weeks, but generally they were one-night gigs, as you know, and one-nighters. And so from 97 onwards till literally 2017, that 20 years, I ended up doing it all, booking the venues, and because he was known, so it was easy to book. But he liked some theatres. He liked all theatres, and he always said his favourite theatre was the one he plays tomorrow. But some theatres were particularly welcoming, so he loved going to those that really didn't mind if we were a long show, because the show was long, I know.
Oh God, they knew, yeah. Didn't they?
I'm going through stuff at the moment for this exhibition that's opening in July, and we've been working on it for 2 years, like you have, 2 to 3 years. And I've had a archivist here, and he made me promise before, in the last 2 or 3 years of his life, he used to say, when I'm gone, you know, you will burn all my notebooks. I mean, he wasn't ill at the time, but he would say, you will burn all my notebooks. And I promised, and I hope I did that with my fingers, because I haven't burnt them. It would have been a crime.
Yes.
Full of his thoughts, his working out, his new comedy ideas, everything. And they will be using a few little bits from those, because I'm very, very careful, very protective of his writing.
Yes, obviously you're going to be true to his heart and honour him, but there's no way you could get rid of everything that he's written like that. And I guess he would be so proud of what you've done, to sort of carrying on this legacy. And I love what you've done. We're going to get to the book shortly as well, and I really adore the book. I've read all the books on Ken, but undoubtedly the book that you collaborated with Tony Nicholson was a beautiful piece of work.
Well, he produced the television programme in that first year after Ken died, at the following Christmas, How Tickled We Were. And he was so sensitive the way he did it. When he said he'd like to do a book, and he'd written a book on Larry Grace, and he'd done quite a lot of writing anyway, we did it, and it's a gentle book. Ken always wanted to write a book, but it was going to be a happy book. He didn't want one of these kiss and tell and
yes.
Anyway, he wanted it to be a happy book. Mine, I think, is a happy book. It's not a terribly clever book, I don't think, I'm afraid, but I'm not criticising it. I'm just saying it's a gentle book. You know, I have had some lovely feedback, put it that way.
It was a beautiful read, and I told so many people about it, and I spread the word. I said, if you're a Ken Dodd fan, you're going to love it. If you weren't really into comedy, you'd still love this book, because it's almost a love story, you know, because it's your life as well. It's a beautiful piece of your heart that went into it.
Paperback now.
Is it in paperback? Is it? I've got the hard copy. I love the hard copies. I keep that. But it's so poignant and beautiful tributes that you've paid in the book. But the Squire of Knotty Ash and his lady, which Tony Nicholson, it's a lovely piece. There are parts in it that's never been touched on before, really. And there's parts of private life, and he was a very private person, wasn't he? I mean, he was always on stage, but when you're at home, you have every right to be at home.
He used to quote Arthur Askey when Ken started. He had his heroes, and Arthur Askey was one. He was at Barn, so effervescent. But Arthur Askey once said to him, Doddy, he said, when you close the front door, close it, keep it shut. Keep your life inside. And we did. The house really became sort of a sanctuary in that respect. It was, you know.
Yeah, you earn that, don't you? You earn that right. Yeah, of course. I just want to talk about when you get to a show. I mean, I just saw you do everything you were doing for the show, but leading up to it as well. I'm going to read a little list I've written here, what you would have been doing leading up to the show, and then when you get to the show. So this is for the listeners that didn't know what you were getting up to back then. So you would book the venues, you'd book the acts, the support acts, work on the dates on the website, you'd pack the car, drive to the venue, make sure dinner was booked and the hotels were booked. You'd pack the car, unload the car, find the dressing room, set up the props on stage, liaise with the manager at the theatre, the box office, the comps, merchandise, front of house. You do the tannoy calls from front of house. You make sure Ken has his costumes and props set in the correct place. You'd introduce Ken. This is just you doing this. You'd get ready as Sibby Jones if you were performing as Sibby Jones as well, performing your half-hour set. You'd bring on props for Ken, stand in the wings and prompt him towards the interval. I don't know if you remember any of this. You make sure he had his interval refreshments. I saw you go out front selling merchandise at the King's Theatre. You reminded Ken to pay the act. That would have been me sometimes. You would prep Dickie Mint for him. You played instruments on microphones in the wings for certain gags, so you'd know the timing. You would then help close the show, announce there was more merchandise for sale. You'd clear the stage, pack the car, whilst you would guide VIPs to his dressing room. You would continue to pack the car, assure the fans waiting outside that he will eventually be out. And then you did what you had to do to settle numbers at the box office, pack up the merchandise, double check the props and dressing rooms were clear, try and politely round up the dressing room chats and get Ken in the car, and you drive home or go to a hotel. It never went unnoticed what you did, Anne, and I appreciated that as a support act. I was like, I kept asking, do you need any help? But you knew exactly where the props needed to go in the car.
That's very kind of you. We did have help. We had. Do you remember Diana?
Yes.
I used to help us with her boyfriend, and he used to do a lot of the driving, and then I would, and Diana and I would play Scrabble in the back. So I did have a lot of help.
Oh, great.
He became ill, so he wasn't able to do any more. And it worked very well. We had an arrangement with 2 or 3 of the acts who worked with us. And they would take on, because they were selling their own merchandise, so they'd sell,
right?
And we'd make it a commission basis as theirs on top of their fee, because they worked very hard during the show.
Sure.
And then they helped. So we did have help. I did have help.
Yeah, it was teamwork. It was teamwork back then.
But I must admit, I was in control and I was the boss.
Yes, you very much looked to the boss. I mean, but
sure he did things.
Yes, but you had to make sure that he was well and fed and watered and you did that. You were always there, and I just want to show my gratitude towards you as a support act for 3 or 4 years that I did, or 6 years spread over time. I noticed what you did, and I'm sure Ken was greatly appreciated of everything that you were doing. So was it just like 30 or 40 shows a year that you would put together?
It could be 80 to 100.
Oh, it was really that much.
I've got one of our flyers. We did a half-year flyer, overlap a bit. So
yes.
You think it's to June, and then maybe June to December. And I remember one August, we had 18 individual dates. I mean, there might have been 2 nights together at one place, but 18 is a lot out of 31 days.
Yeah.
When you think of, yeah. But
wow.
In the end, we were doing usually maybe 2 at the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and 1 in the midweek. About 3 a week in the end. So that's over 100. Yeah,
that's a lot. It's a lot of miles, isn't it? Because
and having little holidays.
Okay. And because you were the boss, did you get to do the logistics of the tour? I mean, you wouldn't do Scotland and then Cornwall. You could work that out.
Exactly. Have you seen? Well, and you know what it's like booking dates. You've got to pencil a few in, and everyone else is penciling, and then you've got to see who's prioritising where are you going to, get in. But I'm thinking, when you did your television, brilliant. You understand?
Britain's Got Talent. Yes.
Talent. Yeah. Did that make a great help to you? Was it good?
I'd say yes. It opened doors. So I worked in America. I worked with the Osmonds. I worked at the Albert Hall with Kenny G. And I also got to do I'm now on my 3rd UK tour this year, but I got to do my first UK tour after that. And people came, the last time I saw Ken and you work was at the Congress Theatre in Eastbourne. And that's where my tour opened. And I got 600 people in. For me, that's probably the best house I've ever had with my name on the ticket. So yeah, it really opened doors.
That's the feeling, you've brought them in. Yeah.
Yes. One thing I am sad about is that I never worked with Ken again after that show. And I remember meeting you and Ken at Buckingham Palace, and he said, you'll never want to work for me again now, would you? I said, Ken, I would do it for free if I could pay the expenses, or the fee won't go up. I'd always come back and work with you. But I think he felt like I didn't need to, but I would always, and I did say that I would always want to work with you. It just never panned out in the last couple of years.
You see, once you're touring, you're touring and you're committed to their, committed to your tour.
Yeah, I did feel like, well, he did say to me, he said, why did you do that dreaded TV show? And I explained, where else can I go there? He didn't like TV talent shows, did he? The way they were treated, their artists.
That's right. I'm surprised he said that to you, but that's what he meant. He said it's the way you get treated. You hear these awful stories afterwards, and then they try to get hold of you and run you, and you end up with nothing and this sort of thing. So you'd be very clever if you have managed to extricate yourself like that. Make the use of it, which was great. It brought you to the public's attention, and now you have your own tour. Your name's up there as the boss.
Yeah, definitely. And I totally understood what he meant, though. I know, because our industry, we find it hard that we can't just come onto a TV show like Ken would guest. He would guest on a TV show and do his act or the raw variety performance, but you have to win a talent show to do that these days. And so I totally understood where he was going, and I agreed with him. I said, what else can I do? It's
the way the business changed, didn't it?
It did completely change.
And so that, in that respect, it was a good thing for you.
Yes.
You had your sense on there, but you already had an act and you were doing things. You weren't going on with no knowledge of the business. Do you know what I mean?
Of course, I knew I knew the outcome, what it was going to be. So that's and I obviously, a lot of acts are on cruise ships now because there's not much work in the UK or television. But all the great acts I know are on cruise ships. But Ken, I know he was offered cruise ships. He never wanted to go on, even though, QE2. Did you ever go on a cruise?
No, we were asked to do one. He was asked to do one. And they said, we'll fly you out to either Hong Kong or somewhere. And you do 4 days and then we'll fly you back from wherever that is. And that sounded pretty good. And I can't remember. I think it just interfered with things we had already booked. But,
yes.
He didn't. He was terribly ill once when we flew to do a private do-it for a pharmaceutical firm in the south of France, and we flew to Nice, and then they said, we're taking out to Cannes, where the San Remo, wherever the film festival is.
Oh yes.
Before the show in the evening, back at the place, and we went in this flat bottom boat along the coast. Well, of course, the boat's going like that, and he was so ill.
Oh.
He was so ill. It was only half an hour ride, but he was desperately ill. And these pharmacists are all giving him tablets. I'll have that one then. Oh, well, all right then. It just knocked him out. He did a show and it worked, but we've no idea how to keep going. Wake up.
I'm not surprised. He got...
But he's never really liked the idea of a cruise, but I would have liked that 4-day thing would have been nice, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, even to get a holiday for yourself without the driving.
Do you cruise? Have you done any?
Not for 3 years. I did do 20 years on the cruise ships, on and off. Yes, from I turned professional in 97 when I was 22. I did my first cruise in 98. And up until the pandemic, I cruised. Now I find it really hard to leave the girls. And, it's...
Well, why are they growing up?
Yeah, they're growing up, 6 and 11, and I still want to watch that transition. For my eldest is going to be a teenager in 2 years. I want to be there for her, and my youngest is blossoming. She's wonderful. So it's good to have the laughter with them. So we watch sitcoms every day, and if I can drive home after a show, I will get home. So I was in Stratford-upon-Avon 2 nights ago, and I got home at 2 a.m. But I was there in the morning, and to me that means a lot.
Yes, yeah.
They can jump on the bed,
Where exactly? Yeah.
I'm Eastbourne. I live in Eastbourne.
Oh, you live in Eastbourne. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, still here. And they, Ken invited me a few times, but I couldn't make the dates. But Good Turn Society. And I never got to see it. But can you explain a little bit about the event?
Oh, the Good Turns was just a group of... How it started was he would always go to the funerals of all the people who were comics in the clubs and well known when he was a boy.
Yes.
And so he would, out of respect, once he did very well and they all knew him really, he still would go to the funerals. Say, hey Johnny, who's gone? I'll tell you go. But what they do at these funerals, these comics would come up to you, these older blokes, and say, hey Johnny, have you heard this one? Have you heard this one? Behind the gravestones and things. He said, look, we can't have this. So he arranged with another fellow who used to be in the clubs with him, Phil Kernock, and they started a thing called the Good Turn Society. And it must have been 35, 40 years ago. Yeah, it would be about 40 now. And Ken got all the names together of the comics that were still going and whatever. And he said, I'll do a lunch for about 30 of them, you see. And then Ernie Mack, who used to run clubs and things in Liverpool, he did the next one. And in the end, they said, well, let's all keep getting together. So 2 or 3 times a year they got together. And it was called the Good Turns, which was like a double meaning,
Yes.
All good at being a turn. And they'll do a few good turns, but it wasn't actually a charity. They would raise a bit of money with a raffle and then give it to some good cause. But it wasn't his main charitable things. But it was, he loved it. And we used to then let the ladies let us in for the Christmas do. Now we still keep it going. But
Great.
There's no men only dues, and it's called the Ken Dodd Good Turns. So we do things, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's in Liverpool, is it? Based in Liverpool, is it?
That's Liverpool, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Hopefully one day I'll make it. It'll be lovely to get there. And the audience with shows are probably the most talked about of the series. He nailed it twice, didn't he? Was he delighted with how those shows went?
Yes, because they both really did well. I mean, it's an honour to be asked to come back and do another one. Another audience with Ken Dodd. Producer of the first one, Lorna Dickinson. I'm working with her now because we're making a documentary of how a museum puts its thing together, and it opens in July this year, how that gets put together. And then as we started filming, and then COVID came, so we started filming different things I've been involved with his foundation. One of the biggest things apart from has been Shakespeare North. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a new theatre. And the foundation, we built the part that's a performance garden. It's got steps coming down. It's outside. It's like a little mini amphitheatre,
Amazing.
And a little idea I had on the steps, you could put Shakespeare quotes and then "How tickled I am," "Tatty hilarious" on other steps. So we've been filming all those things, and I've got involved with so many different charities. It's absolutely marvellous. I've had a whale of a time meeting all sorts of new people and loads of volunteers who work for these charities. But we're not a fundraising charity. We're a giving charity that pays out to specific things.
Yes. So the foundation, does it have a website that people can go to find out about your projects? No.
Not really. I don't do yet. That's what this documentary is doing, but it's not for the purpose of. I suppose one has, when it's a registered charity, they have to know what you're doing. People can look and see how you've spent the money and what you've been doing. Yeah. Yes.
Wonderful. Soon there will be a coronation for King Charles, as we know, coming up in May 2023. I feel like I've already been to a coronation. Now I'm talking about the service day for Ken Dodd when Liverpool stood still. And thank you for the invite. It was very sad. It was very poignant. It was bittersweet. But there was happiness in that day. I mean, everyone was out for Ken, weren't they, on that day? It was just such a beautiful service. You put together an epic service for Ken. And
it was the cathedral were wonderful. We had a new vicar 6 months before Ken passed away, and she was a lovely lady. And she told me sometime later, she said, when I first came for my interview, they said, by the way, in your parish, you have got a well-known, but getting on in years, gentleman. We hope it's a while yet. But when he does pass away, it's not down to you, we're doing it at the cathedral. I didn't know all this.
Oh, really?
Lovely when they immediately said, we would like to do the service. And I didn't have to ask. That was so beautiful. And we worked together, and they took on anything I said, but I also respected, they knew what they were doing. And I sat next to a wonderful lady, the Dame Lorna Muirhead, who was the Lord Lieutenant at that time. And the only relatives I had were my brother, who was in a wheelchair at the end of the row. So I had nobody, my own family, next to me. And I asked her if she'd sit next to me for that, because she would normally have been with the civic crowd there. And she said, I will. And during the service, and she's been to several, she said, this is like a state funeral. It really was, wasn't it? It was quite incredible.
It was incredible. I was sitting in the section with the water rats. There was the Good Turn Society. There was groups of people, all of his friends and family. It was such a wonderful celebration of his life. And what you brought, it was groundbreaking. Yeah, it was like a state funeral, and just tickle sticks as you're walking in and driving in, all up to the cathedral.
And at the end, Ian Tracy, who was the organist for the church, for the cathedral, he started off with just very quietly, da 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 da, because that was his play on music very fast.
Yes.
Started that very slowly, and then it became gradually, as the coffin went down, it became happiness, and then everybody started. I don't know if they were singing, but I think they were, and they're waving sticks.
Yes.
And it was Channel 5 filmed the whole thing. I never do that normally. Yeah.
It was. I know as we went in, I got quite wet on the way in. It was raining on the way in, yes, but on the way out, the sun was shining. And I remember the first tears that actually flowed for me was when the service was over and Ken was being led out by the Diddy men, and my eyes just went, because it was like, oh wow, it was so poignant and meaningful that the Diddy men were there leading him out as well. And it was just such a beautiful celebration. So thank you again for organising these things and still putting on, putting on the show on that day, and it did overrun, which is perfect.
That's what everybody said. That wasn't down to me.
No. The speeches there, Jimmy Tarbuck said some wonderful words, and it was so nice to hear John Fisher talk about Ken the way he did.
Quite moved at the end. He really was. Yes.
Yeah, he was. It blew my mind. It was beautiful. What I've noticed is that you haven't stopped, and you've been involved in so many beautiful tributes, such as in the shape of statues, murals, tribute buildings. And I remember last time I visited the home earlier this year, I was working nearby, and I dropped by, and I saw a building just around the corner from your house. Is it the Happiness Hall, the Ken Dodd Memorial?
We went to school,
right?
And that was, we'd started it. It was condemned. It was being used as a village hall. It's the church hall,
right?
And it was where Ken first went to school, just around the corner from the house. So anyway, they drew up plans and what we'd like to do. Work had to be done, and we really totally renovated it. Built, extended. We had to go to planners and everything. It was a wonderful challenge to do it, and they decided the piece. I play the organ at church, you see, so I'm quite involved with them. And we got them past the plans, and then it was. But I think the way we worked, it didn't cost as much as it would have done if it had handed it over to a big firm to do.
Yes.
My building, and I got this, and all the regulatory things that have to be done. And then to crown it all, we got Edward and Sophie to open it. Prince Edward and Sophie, Countess of Wessex, I think it is.
Incredible.
And, it was an absolutely wonderful day. It was just, they were so charming, and we had a marvellous time. And of course, that was when they were able to do things. But of course, since then, the Queen's passed away. And but that's one of my proudest ones. That's all. And the clock, we did the clock, and then I've done various things with hospitals. Quite with Clatterbridge cancer one, we did all television and radio in all the 110 rooms and things like that.
They are wonderful tributes. I even popped to on the morning of the service. I popped to the Liverpool Library to see the bust that's been made of Ken and walk around the humour section. And it's such a beautiful library, and I understand why he spent so much time there.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's the Picton Library. That's right. Within the library, yes. He always went there. He always used to tell people, go to the library, read about humour, laughter, comedy. They are separate sort of branches the way he did it.
Yes. Yeah, I do. I've got my own library upstairs now. So is one of I love reading. I'm so proud to be part of the Blackpool Showtown team, and. Yes, it must be so exciting knowing that the Entertainment Museum is shortly to be opened, and celebrating not only magic and circus and Strictly Come Dancing, but comedians, ventriloquists, jugglers, everything. And there must be a section for Sir Ken Dodd. So you're working closely with the team there.
I've sort of sponsored a certain amount, and I think it'll be sort of an exhibition space named after him, but it'll be different exhibitions will come into that. So
brilliant.
I'm involved with it. It's just that the one I'm doing in Liverpool at the moment is opening in July, so that's taking a lot of time and concentration. But yes, it's lovely. It's Showtime will be lovely, and it's a good name. And actually, they kindly said that was Ken who suggested that title to them.
Oh.
Or they heard him talk about this is really the Showtown of Great Britain.
Oh, that's lovely. They've kept that, because that's another little nod, isn't it? Yes. That's so nice. And the one in Liverpool, can you tell us where that will be, that museum in Liverpool, please?
A fairly new museum. It's only been open 10 years. It's called the Museum of Liverpool. There's a World Museum as well, which is in the very old buildings where the library is and the Walker Art Gallery. But this is on the waterfront where the Tate is and all those. and it's exactly what it says, Museum of Liverpool. The last exhibition they have temporary exhibitions, that come in for a few months, was John Lennon one, which
Wow.
the curators did with Yoko, and that was one of these amazing minimal ones. You just see a little bit here, a little bit there.
Oh, that sounds brilliant. And how long is that going to be running for?
Well, it starts in July. I think they're saying about 8 months or so.
Oh, brilliant. Good, because I'm touring this year, so I'm definitely going to come and see that. Yeah.
Where I am, just come and knock on the door.
Yes. Oh, bless you. I'd be lovely to see you. So all of these tributes and museums and everything, it keeps the legacy alive, doesn't it? And the documentary, obviously making a documentary, we hope to be out this year or next year.
We're expecting to finish it off this summer. Yes, I'm going down to visit my team, which includes Lorna, who did produce Ken's first audience, and then she's worked in Liverpool on 2008, the Year of Culture. So she's had a long connection, and I'm working, and the director, he's done a lot of filming, a lot of these hospital filming, the mainstream television.
Okay.
These programs that examine what's going on in different hospitals. So I've got a good team. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's I've seen many of the documentaries on Ken, and it's just so nice that you're not finished yet. There's more to tell, and it's I guess the legacy that you're doing. Hopefully, they're following a lot of the legacy in the museums that will be in the documentary as well.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
To show that he will always be there with us. It is so wonderful, and you've continued to contribute so wonderfully to the happiness that Ken brought to us also. And thank you so much for being not only on Eyes and Teeth, but being in our lives and bringing keep the happiness out there and the laughter. Thank you so much.
Well, you keep going and have a wonderful tour, Steve. And I hope you're going to be near me so I can come and watch you.
Oh, there'll always be tickets on the door. Thank you. Well, there's loads of tickets, actually. Thank you so much for being on Eyes and Teeth, Lady Anne Dodd.
Thank you. Bye.
Eyes and Teeth. I was lucky enough to be invited by Roy Hart OBE to perform at Ken Dodd's 90th birthday in London in association with the British Musical Society. This is when I would talk to Peter Pullen, who built the Diddy Men. He built Emu for Rod Hull. He built Orville and Cuddles for Keith Harris, Nookie Bear for Roger de Courcy, Paul Events, Sid and Gladys. He built so many characters, including my last 16 characters in my own show. I heard about Peter Pullen through Jimmy Tamley, who taught me when I was 12 years old. He'd made most of Jimmy's characters and still does today. Peter Pullen is a genius and one of the true gents of show business. Peter and I were talking about Ken Dodd's 90th birthday, and I gave him the mammoth task of building me a Ken Dodd dummy, a remote control Ken Dodd dummy, just for one gag at Ken's 90th. So the gag got a nice reaction, and then after I finished my 8-minute routine with Arthur Lager and my stand-up, I said goodbye, I walked off, revealing Ken Dodd. So I had actually left the stage and Ken Dodd was still on the stage. That was the gag. And I left the Ken Dodd dummy that Peter Pullen built, designed, and helped me set up for that birthday party surprise. And Dodd knew about it. Only a few selected people did, but the whole room didn't. So the Ken Dodd dummy sings happiness for the whole audience. And it was just such a lovely moment. And guess who was on after me? That's right, Ken Dodd. This is my last piece before the end of the entire Eyes and Teeth. Enjoy Ken Dodd in his own words on his 90th birthday.
I can't think of any way of spending any better way of spending your life than slaving over a hot audience. Marvellous. Because you don't do a show. The correct way to do a turn, you don't do it at an audience, you do it with an audience. And you play an audience like you play an instrument. You know where the hot spots are, you know where they need a little bit of coaxing, you know where you can flirt. I never meet this lady when she's eating. This you don't meet in restaurants. Anyway, this man, your Roy Hood, was a wonderful man. He has time for all sorts of things. We've got this committee and that committee. Do you just go for the biscuits or what? A great comedian and a fantastic actor, a wonderful actor. Just look at him now, pretending to be interested. I saw him give a magnificent performance in Oliver as Fagin. Oh, he was the best Fagin ever. I've seen Oliver a few times, I've never seen a Fagin. He was the best Fagin. I was amazed. Why you never became an agent, I don't know. The best job in the world, there, John, is to be in show business. Wonderful. I'm not going to keep you much longer here now. But you do get a bit more than when you get agent. Yeah. I'd like to... There are advantages in growing old. The last show I did at the Palladium, and they said it would be, I was... the staff there, the lovely people, they present, they give me in charge, they play me take posh. They give me a butler, a butler. Yeah, to put me in my tights with a warm spoon. Years ago, it used to be a ladle. So, being in show business it's my life. It's my life. They say, who makes you laugh? And then they say, what do you think of the young comedians of today on telly? Well, they mean well. I blame the parents. Shouldn't give them fizzy drinks. Sex scenes on the television. Two, 3 weeks ago in our front room, and I was sitting in my dad's chair because he'd come down to the pub, and I was sitting in my dad's chair, and on settee is my auntie and my uncle. I was watching the news on television. Oh God! All of a sudden, this sex scene came on. Honestly, Barry, you'd have been shocked. What they call explicit sex. Oh yeah. I just kept on watching the news and let them go on with it. But they do say, how are things now that you reach this? Well, in life, you get philosophical, and I am a philosopher now. Like one of the joys of being mature. You can give advice to younger people and hope that their lives will become better for your advice. So I said, when things look black, send them to the laundry. And all the wise sayings that have been passed down, proverbs, you can lead a horse to water, but a pencil must be lead. Never put off till tomorrow what you can do today. Because if you do it today, and you enjoy it, you can do it again tomorrow. And two pieces of philosophy I'd like to pass on to you, ladies and gentlemen. Two pieces of wisdom, philosophy. The first is for all the gentlemen, for all the men. Gentlemen, look, if ever you find yourself arguing with an idiot, make sure he isn't doing the same. Second piece of wisdom, and I said it to ladies and gentlemen, you'll always remember that never take a sleeping pill and a Senecot on the same night. I'll put it. That's a good matter. The love is a beautiful thing. All kinds of love, yeah, we've done that, yeah. I had a wonderful family. My mother and father were the greatest parents ever. I think that's really why showed it. My dad used to, every week, my dad loved comedians and he loved variety. And every week he used to take us down to a little theatre in the centre of Liverpool called the Shakespeare Theatre of Varieties. And there I saw all variety acts. I saw all the great English comedians, Scots comedians, Irish comedians, Welsh comedians. And that's how I fell in love with variety. This wonderful, magical, wonderful world where everybody looks so healthy. I didn't realise it was 5 and 9 degrees Spain, but everybody looks so wonderful like that. That's the job I want to be. So that's how I started. I started out like, well, probably like Steve, started out at ventriloquist, didn't I? He'll, little Dickie Bench, he gets more than family than I do. But, I said to my dad, how do you comedic? And he told me some jokes and that. And I was a very intellectual child. I used to read The Wizard of the Hotspur. And on the back page, it all story about heroes. That's what I want to be a hero. I want to be a hero. On the back page is a big advertisement from a firm in High Holborn, Elliston's, where they sold stink bombs and itching powder. I'd be one of those. And a sea macroscope. You've never had one of those, have you? Yeah. A sea macroscope. I started to say, you get that abroad. A sea macroscope. It's a plastic thing with little mirrors inside. And you put in your eye socket there, and you can see if an assassin is creeping up. And this is a very important thing for a child of 8 to have. With a big box on his back, and saying, help! And he was full of your teachers, made your friends, send sixpence and stamps, become a ventriloquist. So I did, didn't I? Yes. It's a... That's where it all started. Anyway, love, I say, is marvellous thing. I think ladies are more romantic than men. There's this happy couple here, Mr. Billington, and his child bride. But of course, sometimes it doesn't necessarily, a lady went to the doctor, oh God, doctor, you're going to do something. Oh, you have to nerve ragged. Oh, gee, calm down. What's to do? She said, Jim. Oh, yeah, my husband. What's wrong with him? Oh, she's so irritable. So this none of you ladies will have this, I could, but he was an irritable man. So irritable, bad tempered. And when he kicks off, he knocked off, and he shouts and screams, yells his words. Doctor, I think I can help you. You can, yeah? He does, I think I can help you. You don't argue, don't do shit. Right, I never argue with him, no. You don't answer back, don't do shit. I never answer back, or don't. Next time he's in one of his foul moods, go straight to the kitchen, get a tumbler full of cold water, come back, stand in front of him, and just sip the water. Don't swallow it. Don't argue. Don't answer. And you'll find he'll calm down. That's good. It's not what he said, look, you have to just try it. A week later, she goes, oh, that was wonderful. That was the most fantastic diagnosis. That should be written up in the Lancet. That's the most wonderful cure I've ever, Oh, he was in a terrible mood. Oh, shouting, screaming, yelling. He did not know. I went straight to the kitchen. Got a tumbler full of cold water and I stood in front. He didn't swallow it, no, just sipped water. And he went just, husband went just quiet so well. Quiet on. What is it? What's this wonderful thing? The doctor said, well, he probably just appreciates the silence. But I'm sure that doesn't apply to you, ladies and gentlemen. The last page. This is the last page. Show people are wonderful. Yeah. People there. So I love touring myself. I love playing. I go up and down the motorway like a human yo-yo. out of Scotland, Norwich, down to Bilthwells and Swansea and Cardiff. So I'm doing this, you get interviewed a lot by these presenters on television. They live off their subject, never mind. What was I saying, Chris? This particular one, is Dodd your real name? I said, no, it's an anagram. That didn't really please him to start with, like, you get a giggle map. A giggle map, you took a giggle map, yeah? Yeah, I said, what do you mean? It seems common sense to make notes of you without going different parts of the country. I said, you see, Michael, I said, you can tell a joke in Liverpool and they won't laugh in London. Why? I said, I can't hear it. I'm telling you now, I've had a wonderful, wonderful life so far. I'm in fairly good nick. Usual thing, gentlemen, the old prostate. I had the prostate exam and I got the thumbs up. So, I'm very busy at the moment, touring, thank goodness. We're in Harrogate at the weekend. They're all there, and I've got the next year out will be a big year because I'm hoping to be in the musical, Brexit the musical. And I sincerely wish you everyone there. It's been so lovely today and so much surrounded by so much love and friendship. Can I wish you all, every one of you, good health and happiness, and may all your dreams come true. This is the best business. And a big win on the lottery. So variety. It's at our branch of the theatre. Mr. Billington goes to all posh plays and musicals, and where all the posh actors talk about establishing rapport. Gracie Fields said it was a silver thread from the artist to the audience, and I call it building a bridge. Once you build a bridge, you've got about 30 seconds to a minute when you go on stage, 30 seconds to make friends, to look them right in the eye and say, I love you, I love you, I love you all. I wish you all good health, variety. That's my love. Your love as well, you wouldn't be here. Variety is the spice of life. So,
we wish you peace, prosperity, and lots of happiness! The greatest gift that we possess. I thank the Lord that I've been blessed with more than my share of happiness. To me, this world's a wonderful place. I'm the luckiest human in the human race. I've got no silver and I've got no gold, but I've got a happiness in my soul. Happiness to me is ocean tide, the sunset fading on a mountainside, a big old heaven full of stars above, when I'm in the arms of the one I love. Oh, happiness, happiness, the greatest gift that we possess. I thank the Lord that I've been blessed with more than my share of happiness. Happiness, happiness, the greatest gift that we possess. I thank the Lord that I've been blessed with more than my share of happiness. More than my share of happiness.
You have until 7th of July 2024 to visit the Ken Dodd Happiness exhibition at the Museum of Liverpool. And don't forget, the documentary The Real Ken Dodd, The Man I Loved, is about to premiere across theatres around the UK. I'd like to thank all my guests on this final episode of Eyes and Teeth, the specials with Sir Ken Dodd, Part 2. Thank you to Keith Simmons, Hilary O'Neill, Johnny Manns, Nigel Hogg, Don Reed, Danny Hunt, John Fisher, and Anne Dodd. And I acknowledge all clips from YouTube on this episode from Another Audience with Ken Dodd. The Michael Parkinson Show on BBC with Ken Dodd and Billy Connolly, Ken Dodd's Christmas Special, BBC's The Good Old Days, the Liverpool Service on 5 News, Arthur Askey on the Ken Dodd Laughter Show, Steve Hewlett's own footage, BBC Mastermind, and exclusive footage from Ken Dodd's 90th birthday in association with British Musical Society, with big thanks to Mark Pullen and Peter Pullen. I've spent over 500 hours working on this project and interviewed over 200 guests of the world of comedy, variety, TV and radio. And I have to say, I've thoroughly enjoyed every moment. Without it, I have to admit, I would have finished my book Ventriloquist instead of locking myself away during lockdowns. I could have spent 500 hours more with my family, and saying that makes me sad. But now I have to get that back and start to enjoy more time with them. I can say I've not wasted my time, and you won't either, when you download, review and share the podcast Eyes and Teeth with your family and friends to help get it out there to more people. Today's quote comes from Steve Hewlett, ventriloquist. Remember those before you, respect those that are with you now, and pay it forward to the ones of the future. Eyes and Teeth is written, produced and hosted by Steve Hewlett, vocals by Lola, Larissa and Nina Hewlett. Thanks so much to Kevin Dean for the brilliant theme tune and jingles, and I'd just like to take this moment to dedicate this whole podcast to those we have lost since recording these episodes. Actor John Challis, pantomime legend Wyn Calvin, comedian Paul Eastwood, comedy performer Phil Butler, actor and comedian and past King Rat Duggie Brown, and brother water rat and TV celebrity chef Dave Myers. Remember that June the 8th, this year and every year, is Dave Day, a day dedicated to Dave. That's it. I think you've heard enough of my voice for now. Thank you for joining me on these chats. They will hopefully be enjoyed for years to come, and I mean this with hope in my heart that they help to keep variety alive. Good night.